Meka Whaitieri.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, tēnā tātou katoa te wharenei. Mr Speaker, I too rise in support of this, be it small bill, but nonetheless a very important bill. And my contribution is to acknowledge that every Kiwi, Mr Speaker, has a sporting gene in them. Be it be it as a participant, be it a armchair critic, a supporter, but also, as earlier mentioned, the many managers and coaches, administrators that do some amazing things throughout our supporting bodies throughout the country. So I do want to acknowledge them, Mr Speaker. There is absolutely no room in New Zealand for match fixing or cheating whatsoever. And that is why it is a no-brainer that we stand up and eradicate something that could easily influence or infiltrate our precious sporting system here in New Zealand. But Mr Speaker, as others have mentioned, sporting coming through the sporting system has a way of teaching you and preparing yourselves for many challenges in life. And I've been quite fortunate to have represented this country as a netballer and a softballer and played, and thank you very much, many years ago. And also I know we're pushing this particular legislation in anticipation that we're going to have the Cricket World Cup. So I do want to acknowledge that I also played representative cricket for Hawke's Bay way back. I won't tell you the year, but I did take on the Indian women's team. So to my fellow colleague there, Mr Ian McKelvey, if you want to resurrect the parliamentary cricket team, I'm sure I can bring out a couple of underarms or overarms or whatever to contribute. But on a serious note, Mr Speaker, it is important that we safeguard any intrusion into our country for what is determined as cheating and match fixing. And like previous speakers have said, there are threats, assessments, warnings of increasing risk of crime syndicates, particularly in Australia, in terms of sports match fixing. And we only have to reflect on the name in cricket of the Cairns family name. And I recall watching the older Mr Cairns, Lance, play, and I have those memories of, he didn't actually have a bat, he had a club, reminiscent of a caveman, and I remember watching it with great delight, almost hitting 6 for 6 in an over, and thinking what a giant of a man. So it's unfortunate that the Cairns name has been tarnished with the allegations that have occurred under max fixing. Mr Speaker, we talk about the fixing in terms of the significant damage and the integrity it can do to our sporting reputation internationally, given that it contributes almost $5 billion to our economy back in 2008-2009. And Mr Speaker, I'd like to reflect, as has been earlier mentioned, the successes of Liddy Coe, people like Michael Campbell, people like Joseph Parker, who represent the Silver Fern and our nation as they take on the wider world. But it is important that we uphold, not just in terms of stamping out a potential wrong that can creep into our sport, but it's actually preserving and safeguarding our reputation internationally. Therefore, we need to be vigilant in this space. Mr Speaker, the bill will help to address the risks that next year's New Zealand Cricket World Cup and the FIFA Under-20 Football World Cup, both events coming to our country, and I'm looking forward to seeing them play both in February and March and May and June respectively. There was some earlier comments made by my colleague Trevor Mallard in terms of the recently victorious display of our rugby league team just down the road here, and where we unfortunately didn't have a government representative at that game. very, very poor, Mr. Speaker, but, you know, I was there and I was raising the flag. It's a very rare thing. It was a very rare thing to see the Kiwis take on the Aussies and beat them in your own home turf. So I do want to acknowledge the success of our New Zealand Rugby League team. Mr. Speaker, these are enjoying times when we as Kiwis can attend sporting events such as the Rugby League, and I wish I had the same passion as the Silver Ferns at the moment, who are going through a bit of a rebuild and a reconnect to yeah, well, maybe we need to look at the coach, but we'll leave that for another kōrero. But seriously, Mr. Speaker, I'm just... No. I quite like the job I've got at the moment, Trevor. Thank you very much. But look, there are a lot of sports people, like I mentioned earlier, who dedicate their lives, not just in terms of the enjoyment, but to the success of the sport, and the benefits we gain as participants in New Zealand sport cannot be underestimated, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it is, like I said, important that we see this piece of legislation go through. I look forward to when it comes to the committee stage, because at the end of the day, it's not only preserving what we as Kiwis have grown up with, but we don't want cheating creeping at all into what we hold very dear, and which does create the fabric of our country in terms of the opportunities, the successes, and of course the learnings we get through sport participation. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the parts of the bill that talk specifically, I want to draw and make mention of the new section 240A, which into the Crimes Act 1961, which is to make clear that certain match fixing activity is a form of deception under section 240. This removes the current uncertainty about whether match fixing falls within the scope of that part of the Crimes Act. I too want to acknowledge, Mr. Speaker, the work of the Select Committee. Obviously I'm not a member of the Select Committee, but nonetheless I want to acknowledge all members in terms of putting this up, and for the submitters. I too was hoping that we would have more from across our national bodies. I know this is particularly pushed ahead, has been pushed ahead simply because of the pending sport fixtures next year, but we can't lose sight that there are opportunities where this kind of practice can creep in, and that's why I understand that this legislation is going to prevent, and so we need to take that wide angle lens and not just what occurs on the field, on the court, but also what happens on our waterways, on our racing tracks, which has been ably covered by the contributors this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it has been very enjoyable to actually contribute to this bill that goes to the heart of something that I love dearly, and like I said, most New Zealanders love dearly, and that we do not want cheats. We don't want to max fixing, and we sure as hell want a fair and equitable chance for all New Zealanders, unlike what we have seen in this House for this week, the vile and the grubby politics that has come from the Prime Minister. Kia ora tātou.